thoughts on where you think that stands before we go into it.
Yeah. So the very last meeting, so I'm not on the real committee, but on the last meeting I was at, which was June 19th, June 19th, we talked about limiting a few of the options. So one of the options that was eliminated was moving the roads for Churchill. So I think right now the options for Churchill really are around closing it completely, doing a like citywide tunnel, or doing nothing. So now the council may add or remove other options in the future. So it's not a definitive. This is just what staff has been directed to study.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the current plan
for Churchill and for Embarcadero. Any?
There's nothing. When I tried doing on Embarcadero, were you at the June 19th meeting?
We were not. We were unfortunately didn't make that one.
So on that meeting, I tried to because I think if we let's say close church, I don't think we necessarily want to push traffic onto Embarcadero because I think it's completely neighbors against each other, so we don't really want to do that. So yeah, so but I don't. It's been about months. I don't recall exactly what happened, but I don't think that made it into the motion.
Right. It's as we understand just from the press coverage, which we don't know if that's accurate, is that indeed right now, as you say, the options for Churchill are primarily closure, but there might be one or two others.
Well, there's just two others, like do nothing or putting the whole train on the ground.
Right. Okay. Right. And then for Embarcadero Road, it sounded like the recommendation was not to pursue widening at this time, but because the intersection, that underpass is ancient and it's not a forever solution. But in that case, I think, Elaine and I don't have a specific immediate concern, but I guess we wanted to just voice our directional concerns for these kind of topics, particularly for the corridors that involve all the kids. We live right there. We've been there for 35 years.
I went to Valley, so we know the bike patterns well.
It seems
Your kids to Churchill?
they actually both Churchill and Embarcadero. And I think I guess we don't want to sound like we're anti-expansion because actually we're not. We just think that if the primary response is widening, if that's the first instinct that people use for that underpass, I think we'll miss the great opportunity to address what's the actual problem, which is that there's just too much congestion, not just the cars, bicyclists, pedestrians, the new additional load from town and country, which has been quite dramatic. I'm sure you've noticed that. It's made that intersection quite a bit worse.
Well, the biggest problem is the signalization. Like, it's not synchronized.
That's right. There's a lot of issues. And there's not really great pedestrian access around that area. If you're trying to take a bicycle from this side of El Camino to the Stanford side, it's, it's like Frogger because you've got tough sidewalks, tough crossings, islands in the middle. So I guess our point on that intersection is, and it will become particularly more pronounced if we do close Churchill, is that we would be opposed to, and I think a lot of the community would be opposed to just widening as the answer. The answer probably is more holistic, to step back and think about that whole short section from Embarcadero to El Camino. And widening may very well be part of the answer, but the tone that it seemed to be that we were reading, at least, was leading with widening as the solution. And really, that's just one of the tools. And we just want to voice our concern that if we just put more cars through that existing situation, even making them go faster with less congestion, I think that's going to hurt. I think we're running an increased risk of someone getting seriously injured, one of the students getting seriously injured, or there'd be more and more fender benders in and out of town and country. So I guess our concern was, when we first read about the widening, looked like it was more imminent, how we want to probably be more vocal about that. But I guess we'd want to use our time with you to register concern that widening can't be it's not the end, it's just a means. And the end should be to really reimagine that whole section in a way that captures why we're all in Palo Alto, bike friendly, pedestrian friendly. And the cars, we have to accommodate them, but
So from Embarcadero, what do you think about the bike friendliness there?
So I think there's, we were just talking about that. We think that that there are challenges there. First of all, the road itself is not very bike friendly. You can't go on the road. It's not really designed for that. But that section where the Professorville and Old Palo Alto and Pali come together, it's particularly bad in the mornings. I'm sure you've seen it. The cyclists really have a hard time navigating because the north-south crossings are poor. The sidewalks are really quite perilous. They kind of come and go. The underpass is really difficult for everybody in both directions.
And the exits onto and entrances onto Alma.
Onto
And just
Alma,
another, it's a frog.
Alma, and then also on El Camino, it's really tough because if you're going west, those crossings across El Camino, though they're generous, there's islands in the middle, and there's all that right turn traffic from town and country. And so the short answer is, it seems like someone, we're not experts, but someone who looked at that whole space with an eye to improving pedestrian and bicycle flow could probably make a lot of improvements pretty quickly. And pretty inexpensively. One of the things we think about for the kids at Pali is there a way to get them over the top? Just a pedestrian overpass, just something light and great.
You mean over Alma?
Probably over Embarcadero is what we see, because I don't know if you live in that neighborhood or watch it.
But there is already an overpass, right? Because you could go, you could there's like a you could go.
Right, over where Alma crosses.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you go, one thing that's interesting to do, I think it'll be very informative. If you go there between, I don't know when the early lunch break is, 11:40 or so, a lot of the kids walk over to Town and Country for lunch, and they all do it at that grade intersection. And the cars are there, the bicycles are there.
Yeah, the light.
At the light.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that light, it would be tough for the students to remove right now, because that's I don't want to say they're too lazy, but for whatever reason, they don't walk back over to take the thing. So
I've noticed that. Yeah.
So it's a pretty eye-opening little experience, and it got a lot worse once Town and Country was renovated, because now we have the student traffic, which has always been there for lunch, but now we also have a lot of visitors. It's not like Stanford Shopping Center, but it's become a pretty popular spot for everybody, residents and non-residents.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, I think I think exactly, you asked a great question. If we really said, well, how do we improve the pedestrian and cycling flow through there, at least for us, I think we would be willing to do a horse trade for expansion of one more lane to remove the 4-3 pinch in exchange for a really great comprehensive plan to fix a lot more of the problems there.
How do you think neighbors would feel?
I think there'll be an initial negative reaction, I think, of course, but because it reads like traffic. And in fact, the reason we originally made our appointment with you was a flyer circulated, which we now come to understand might have been a little alarmist, because it wasn't an expansion of, it wasn't Oregon Expressway again.
It wasn't adding another lane.
Right. It was fixing the pinch point under the underpass.
Yeah.
So I think if my advice would be, if we were to market it to the community, we would do it with a more holistic message. It's, here's the master plan to improve that area, and one of the components, that's just a component, is fixing that pinch point. And I think the residents would view it as a horse trade, because we all are suffering from it. It's not a great spot in town. We now have to go out, we don't use that intersection anymore coming to it from our house. We go off and down to Churchill, which maybe not so much anymore, or go through.
It's still a discussion, but I mean, how would you feel about if Churchill closed and then it's just Embarcadero expanded? How would you feel about that?
I guess I would worry about, initially just going through the day. There's a lot of students that are crossing at Churchill to get to school. And so what happens to those kids?
What if it was like a bike tunnel?
I think what Eric is saying about holistic approaches is important, but I really understand there's a lot of pressure. We don't have a lot of arteries going west anyway. Embarcadero, and I'm just thinking about games at Stanford or whatever. That's what they know, right? So there'll be increased pressure on that artery. So a holistic approach about how we're going to get traffic in the morning across to El Camino that isn't just El Camino or just Embarcadero for sure. And I guess I think about the kids because it's very intense in the morning in particular.
Yeah. I see like in the morning, like Churchill, like I look at all the bikes. It's like the whole lane of bikes. It's like, and it's like not just the first. It's like the whole like 100 feet or something. It's like just a ton
No,
of
it's
yeah.
a ton of kids.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
great. I think
and our son used to just, he kind of game it depending on the morning because he knew kind of the traffic, the bike patterns in the morning. And so, you know, and I think that population is kind of unique because the kids are not necessarily thinking about all the traffic
yeah.
safety issues, perhaps. So I think a holistic approach where there's a dedicated space for that would be important.
Yeah, I think it would be a missed opportunity to close Churchill without also beginning the dialogue on what to do about that Embarcadero section. Because I think but I don't know if Elaine agrees. I would be supportive of closing Churchill as long as there was pedestrian bike east-west access. Because I think it's for the kids. I mean, really, and it would have to be all the way to put them into.
And traffic calming, because if you, you know, one thing that Pinch Point does do is it does calm traffic.
Well, it definitely does that.
So, you know.
Enrages the driver.
Yes.
And we're not experts on that, but, and I know that that's a concern that our neighbors would have, is that, you know, traffic already can go a little too fast before that pinch point.
And remember also there's that unfortunate choke point over Embarcadero on Alma where it loses a lane just one block down or 2 blocks past Kellogg. So what would happen, I'm afraid, is people would have that extra speed for not having that choke point, and now they would all be honking and horning, you know, right over Embarcadero, which would be great. That's why I think, you know, these things are all, I keep coming back to this term, but holistic. But I think to your question is, directionally, I think closing Churchill to car traffic, to east-west car traffic, and renovating, if you will, the spot between, say, Emerson and El Camino on Embarcadero, which could include a fourth. I think that would be okay. I think that would make sense to people.
I think we got a lot of complaints about, well, not complaints, but concerns about, you know, turning Embarcadero into like, an expressway, and so there's some concerns about. But I think you're right. Some of that's not understood about, like, well, fixing that choke point, right, versus like turning to an expressway.
That's right. I think we would have a very different tone here, and the issue is if we felt we were getting another Oregon Expressway. I mean, it wouldn't be Palo Alto for us anymore. The whole reason we're here is for a feeling of ability to the community, and that east, you know, that was another cutting up of the city along the road would be terrible. I think it'd be terrible for the whole town, not just people. So I would be just violently opposed to that. But that's not the point. The point is, you know, we have 2 lanes in each direction, 4 lanes, so it'll go into 3. But interestingly, just a little piece of data, if you live in that neighborhood, you'll see that the westbound traffic, where there are 2, is just as awful and congested near that underpass as the eastbound traffic, where there's only 1. So, I keep coming back. I think just this it's a false hope to think that adding 1 more lane is going to make.
I think I mean, so I was on the planning commission before. We kind of looked at this a bit. I think that okay, we're not going, but I think the other issues like signalization, because like El Camino, we can't really control that,
Right.
And then you're right about the students, right? We got to get going, but one last question for you guys is, what's your thoughts about undergrounding all of Caltrans?
I would be wildly supportive of that. I mean,
I thought that had already been.
No, it's not people. But the problem with it is it's crazy expensive, right? It's like $4 billion, right? Especially you pay for it. And there's only a couple ways you pay for it. Like one is, well, you can do hybrid options too, but it's like you have to taxes, like lots of taxes, right? Maybe just taxes for more taxes for people along the train tracks, perhaps. Because then instead of the train, you have a park. But the other thing is using development. Use development to pay for it. So, but that means a lot of development. So, I don't know. What is your guys' feeling about that?
I mean, to me, directionally, that's the right kind of growth for the city. In other words, if we really want to continue to grow, you know, I think that's the kind of thing we need to bite the bullet and do. And again, maybe it's. I would be, for example, in favor of a large, thoughtful development plan for the area. Maybe not necessarily.
Well, just be for downtown and Cal. You couldn't because in order to pay for the underground, you have to put in downtown areas because that's the only place where people. Well, it's the only place where you can get enough money. From doing it to pay for $4 billion.
I don't know. I think, a combination of,
Keeping it on the table seems
Yeah.
reasonable.
and you know, the trains going under would mean we'd have a whole bunch of other things we'd get.
Well, you get a lot of parks, right?
A lot of
I mean,
parks.
except for the downtown. Downtown is very intense, but everywhere else would be parks, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Love that idea.
But it's a lot of intense development. And we're talking like 10 million square feet, so a lot, right? So,
Yeah. I don't understand where that would all be and how we would accommodate it. But you know, more mid-rise buildings downtown is fine with me.
Okay, sounds good. Hey,
Well, thank you so much
appreciate it.
for meeting with us. We really appreciate your
Appreciate
time.
your time.
Good luck. Thank you.